Thank you very much, Guillaume. So now we're going to come to our second and final panel for today, which is now looking at the question of what do we need from the regulation side to handle all of these very many things that we've been talking about today. And for that, it will be moderated by our EASA Director of Flight Standards, Jesper Rasmussen. And if Jesper, you and the panel could please come on stage now. Thank you.
Right. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the distinguished gentlemen in the panel. The ambition is to have one of the best panels today, and since we only have two, I think it's achievable. We are going to discuss regulation and innovation. And just to set the scene, because we have, roughly speaking, on one side, we have the innovators, companies, research institutions, and so on, inventing new things, seeing the benefits in terms of environment, more efficiency, etc. And of course, they are already in love with that product or process, so it can only go too slow. So that's one part. Then we have, on the other side of the desk, we have the regulators, the ASA, national authorities, and we are put in this world to ensure that safety for the citizens and for the passengers are in place. That is the basic role. That's the existential role we have. Now, we try to do that by asking questions about the risks and how to mitigate them and so on. But we also know, not only deep down, but at the front of our mind, that we should not break too much the innovation. We need also to help. I think most authorities, including EASA, is having that as top of mind. So, yes, we have to ensure safety, but we also have to accommodate the innovation in order to progress and evolve in our industry. So how do we balance that? That's going to be one of the themes of today. We are dancing everybody around our regulation. And it's a big piece of work developed over decades. We have hard law rules, implementing rules. We have technical specifications done by EASA. We have industry standards. We have flexibility provisions also when the rules doesn't fit exactly. And we are looking at that body of regulation, and here the industry and research is coming with the new innovations and looking at this and say, hey, it doesn't fit. Or perhaps it fits, but it requires some massaging of whatever rule or flexibility provision. So that is what we're going to discuss today. And I think we should start with our representative from industry. Today it's Arnold Hössler, coming from Lufthansa Group. And you are in your daily operations touching the operational regulations of air ops, of maintenance, air crew, etc. So that's your ball game. Mm-hmm. So you, of course, also have a lot of innovative idea how to progress with your company. So how do you regard from industry side the regulators and the rules that we have? Please share with us.
Thank you, Jesper, and I think you placed it very nicely, stuck in between somehow. Yeah, there's the innovators and digitization and sustainability and all these topics, and the great AI plan Guillaume just introduced, and then there's regulation, so the safe side. I'm actually stuck in the middle inside Lufthansa Group. I'm responsible to implement all this great regulation in technical fleet management. We have 12 AOCs in Lufthansa Group. So it's a bit of a flea circus. And I thought, well, how do I best explain you what we need? Shall I bring high-fly roadmaps and sustainability charts and the top-level stuff, yeah? Like the Airbuses, they present you big visions on autonomous flights, or the big stuff. And that's really cool. We all love that, and we love the AI roadmap. But then I said, oh, I think I will lose you. And I invite you to join me a moment in my work about 3 months ago. It came as a surprise when a young engineer from our Munich operation from Lufthansa CityLine called us and said, well, I'm not sure, but can we talk about this? I had this crazy idea. And he's a troubleshooting man, know him by chance personally. And he disclosed what he encountered on a beautiful Airbus 320 the other night before, so real opposite scenario. He was alone, he was night shift, and there was various erroneous fault messages on the beautiful plane. Engine, aircraft on ground, airspeed rising, so can't be. All kinds of ATA chapters giving alarms. So we call this a Christmas tree situation. You look in the cockpit, and retard was called out on. So I spare you the details. It's a Christmas tree. You don't know where to start. All the colors on. And ops control is asking you, can we put this on the morning departure, 6 a.m.? Young guy, backup, sick. So what to do? Number one is ask for the time he really needs. Duly qualified, but it's a complex situation. Human factors kick in. He's trained to do that, but he will need time. And being a smart kid, he dared to open ChatGPT, he told me. The same ChatGPT you all might know. And he simply put this prompt in, I have an Airbus 320 on the ground, this is the indications. Could you help me to understand? He shared me the screenshot of his actual real-life analysis. This was 3-4 months ago. And he shared this later again also with our technical fleet managers. And this was an eye-opening moment. ChatGPT knows Airbus 320. Came out with a fault analysis, not perfect. And the second time we played it again, also it was slightly different, which is maybe also not good. But it could make sense of terms like IDERO and FCU and all the good stuff, being an engineer myself. So we took a text marker and analyzed which are the green parts, the good engineered parts, which is the safe, which is the maybe, and which is no. Zero preparation time. Happens today, probably as we all speak about innovation in here. It happens anyway. It's open. So now, my first reaction was, wow, that's cool. On the other hand, my role, technical standards and safety and this stuff, follow processes. What the hell is happening? Yeah. Then again, I believe, and that's the insight I want to share with you, I genuinely believe it's those moments that create innovation. It's the garage of some folks in Silicon Valley, famous names. But it's these moments where a young kid with best intention tries something out, speaks up. Now, it didn't go on auto mode. It's an assistant advice, basically, he got. And now we took this idea and created a bit of a safe bubble around it, and started a bit of an initiative by creating our own company, Protected Controlled Environment AI, training that AI as a digital colleague, as a digital engineer, with safe information, with approved data, with actual engineering experience, with fleet data, with everything. So all that complex know-how, we would normally train fully qualified B1 certifying staff. And then we reach out to EASA and say, but can this be a use case to create regulation around this? Because today we train humans, they make errors. So how do we need to train a future digital colleague, and what is he allowed to do in support mode, and maybe step by step later in autonomous? So, long story short, we really embrace innovation in those small use cases best, I believe. And I think the regulator's role in that case is to enable, to support, to provide the freedom, to allow for such agile moments, to allow for fail and try and error. And maybe also not to focus on one specific technology, because, well, looking at the faces in this room, probably a year ago, none of us knew ChatGPT and OpenAI. So please avoid regulating ChatGPT, because the animal will change its colors and shapes and skin. So let's stay on the safe side and providing a platform to grow, but non-prescriptive. Maybe that for a start.
Thank you very much. Very instructive, good story. We could call it innovation from below, because that will be the cue word for the next panelist, where it's perhaps more innovation from above in the sense that it's research, so it's organized. Possibly also some of the researchers are doing night shift because they are so committed to their work. But at least it's another perspective for innovation, but still with the same question. How do you, when you start to see the results of some of your research, how does that fit into the regulation, and what are your suggestions for the European regulatory system to cope with, hopefully, the good results of new research? Alain Super.
Thank you, Jesper. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a few words about what we do. We are essentially an agency like Clean Aviation, you heard of previously, and we invest in research and innovation with a kind of specific transport goal, which is, in our case, to modernize air traffic management and fundamentally transform the way flights are operated, because we need to make sure that all of the beautiful investments that are going into the next generation of aircraft that are ever going to be more efficient and fuel efficient and quieter can actually operate at their maximum efficiency levels. We do that with a sense of focus also, and many of the investments we are doing are actually on topics that are potentially disruptive, scary for regulators, and we end up being the largest EU aviation-specific research program investing on scary topics. AI is central to our program, autonomy, automation, virtualization. All of these hold the promise to drastically transform the way the human will operate next to a machine. Without having asked ChatGPT, the idea is that unless we do that, we are unable to protect our future aviation system, because if we look at the forecast of traffic for the future, we can argue whether it would be dramatically continuing to increase, but we know that there will be fluctuations up and down. There will be many more types of vehicles. There will be a greater complexity and heterogeneity of traffic at various flight levels. We are speaking drones, high-level operations, controlled airspace. So unless we actually embrace these changes, risks will go up. And that's where our collaboration with EASA is central, because EASA has a central role to play in developing a technical regulatory framework that is future-proof. And we are working very hard with EASA to establish, in a way, CESAR as a regulatory sandbox, if you want, of the next generation technical regulatory framework for the areas that are covered by our program. And I would like to echo maybe the parallelism to the previous presentation made specifically on AI. We are trying to create trust close to authorities and rule makers about new upcoming transformations. And I will just conclude by saying it's not just a research and innovation program, it is actually being implemented. And politicians want us to have completed the implementation of this transformation by 2040, because it is considered a low-hanging fruit compared to the major transformations that are coming and massive investments with regards to SAF, the next generation aircraft vehicles. So the expectation on us is high, and I really have a lot of expectation with regards to our collaboration with EASA, which we are very much focused on to make this happen.
Thank you very much. It sounds that like a big train coming our way, and perhaps we don't need to dismantle the whole existing rule universe, but there's certainly some challenges to look at. Now, turning to the authority side, Jan Peter, you're sitting on the other side of the desk, so to speak. You are meeting once in a while innovators coming with their projects. So how does the world look from a national authority point of view? Of course, you can always give a quick answer, and that is no. But that's not really the way to go. So how do you handle that, and what are your reflections on the current regulations? Is it a useful toolbox, or is it a difficult toolbox, or an unusable toolbox?
Well, thanks a lot for inviting me today. I know I will not say it's unusable. That's a wrong answer. But anyway, I'm listening to the presentations today and the people involved in technology development, and this is really exciting. But I think what is equally exciting is getting up in the morning and thinking, what are the systemic changes we need to do to make sure that we can have innovation? Now, the theme of this panel is a regulation. And being a member state of EASA, we are also EASA. So when we are sort of doing our job in Norway, and just to give you a little bit of context, we are very much pushing for testing out zero or low emission technologies. We have a regional aviation network with routes ranging from 40 kilometers up to 400 or 500 kilometers. With some of them are very heavy routes, some of the busiest in Europe, and some are very thinly populated, so to speak. So that's a context. So we are looking at regulation again in a systemic way. So I think the one part of your question is about what is the sort of the technical regulation concerning aviation. But I'll just also bring in this bigger regulatory question is what other parts need to be addressed to make sure that we can implement another system. So for us, this a zero emission aviation system or a low emission aviation system, bearing in mind that nothing is zero emission, but still, it is really a systemic change, and it requires also to look at the regulation from other industries, from other sectors, because we know we need to import technology from them. And it's also about looking at even incentives as regulation, looking at how, for example, can we use the public service obligation where the state buys services from airlines, saying that we'll pay you to come here to fly because we only have 15,000 people in that one town, but we still need to fly. That is also regulation, and which something we should be looking at. Mm-hmm. But going back to the sort of technical side, which may be the key issue here, but we still need to look at the big picture. I think some of the answer here would be that there is quite a lot of flexibility, and I'm not too worried about the aircraft themselves. What I think we have yet to discover a lot, and this is something we're looking at from a Norwegian standpoint. We're really trying to have all these innovators come to Norway and try to test their technology in actual flying, whether it be on innovative pilot contracts or as a PSO requirement in 3 or 4 years' time from now. We see that there's a lot of flexibility, but we don't know if the flexibility is the same in all the areas. On the technical side, maintenance, aircrew, et cetera, and operations. And so this is a really interesting journey where we have to, and I think it's a little bit of a cultural change as well, because if we have someone knocking at our door saying, we want to test this system, whether it's AI or an aircraft or whatever it is, I think we tend, as a cultural thing, to say, well, show me your risk assessment, or, well, maybe, tell me and I'll see if we can give you a temporary approval. But the answer should rather be, how can we support? And then I would pick up the phone and talk to EASA or others where I know there is competency. Because if we don't have the competency, we should learn to say, I don't know. We don't know if we can accept it. We need to build this understanding of this, let's say, a use case. So I think have to have a rather humble approach, slightly different than maybe we have been building over the decades. I think I'll stop there. No.
Okay, thank you very much. Changing the view to what industry at large can do themselves. Mark, you have recently joined the EuroK, and normally when you talk about industry standards, you get a picture of a stabilized industry, a mature industry, where all the actors can meet in a room and agree on certain industry standards. Now, industry standards and innovation, how can they play together? Can industry also in the area of standard setting actually promote and facilitate innovation? How do you look at that?
So thank you, and good afternoon. First, I'll say a few words about EuroK. So EuroK is a membership-based organization. We've got 450 members throughout the world, and our members include the aviation industry, the regulator, research institutes like the CESAR Joint Undertaking, and we deliver internationally recommended standards. So these standards are developed by our members. And so it's important that it's the members who develop the standards using the state-of-the-art of the members. So currently, EuroK is looking at the many different technologies, but we look also at the latest emerging challenges to aviation. So where do standards fit into this? Well, standards act as a bridge. They bridge the gap between research and development and the markets. So they can increase the probability and possibility of market uptake. So by having a common language and framework, the different systems should start to be able to interact seamlessly. So it's through this interoperability we provide a platform for novel technologies and novel solutions. So we need to anticipate the standardization need through the research and development. So research and development projects need to identify the gaps for standardization. The data that comes from the validation projects can then be used to inform EuroK, and then we can start launching activities that are related to the potential enhancements of existing standards, updates or creation of new standards, or launching of new activities. So it's key to have the early anticipation in the research and development for the standardization and the regulatory material. We also identify standardization needs through initiatives like the ATM Master Plan. We work closely with the CESAR Joint Undertaking for the ATM Master Plan, and we work closely with EASA for EASA roadmaps. So it's important to identify an early identification through our partnerships that we can do this. Going to artificial intelligence, we had the flash talk and the discussion for ChatGPT. Since 2019, we've already had a working group looking at artificial intelligence, and the initial reporting, the report the EuroK group had to do, was looking at use cases for artificial intelligence in both the ground and the air. And since then, the group has been tasked with writing standards and guidance material, and so it's helping with the development and certification of aeronautical systems that make benefit of these new AI technologies. So this working group also, because it's international, because we have international partners, it acts as a forum, and by having this type of forum, we've got more chance of global adoption of these new technologies and these novel solutions. The challenges that we can see, it's about competencies, the competencies being available. Now within EuroK, we already have working groups looking at electric, hybrid, hydrogen, VTOL, etc. So within EuroK, we are building the competencies, and it means that the members, the industry, is building competencies, and that's key for the eventual deployment of these new technologies. Another aspect is that these new technologies need to be operated and maintained. And in 2009, ICAO set up the Next Generation Aviation Professional Initiative, which EASA closely supported. And just recently, EuroK has also created a working group 125, and it's looking at creating this forum, and so we can see how universities and we can see training and mentoring and come up with ideas of how to have young professionals that would be interested in joining the aviation industry. And that's a key aspect for any future technology by 2040, because we need the future engineers to be around. And I think some of the success factors associated with correct standardization and regulation is, it was mentioned before by Alain Leroy, a partnership, a collaboration. So it's ensuring the partnership collaboration between the industry, between the regulators, between R&D, and through this collaboration that we've got a good chance of success. And another success factor would be competition, because through the standards, we create a level playing field. And through these standards, we're de-risking potentially the development of these new technologies. And so we're creating a platform and an environment for new entrants to come in. And finally, the most important is having a clear strategy. So the strategy comes from the ATM master planning, it comes from, in Europe, from EASA roadmaps, but also at ICAO level, we've got the Global Air Navigation Plan and other international initiatives that give the clear strategy of how we can go there. So in summary, it's the partnership, as Alain Leroy said, and it's anticipating the standardization and regulation needs early on.
Thank you very much, Mark. Now, Joachim, the Commission is the guardian of the single market in Europe, and also in collaboration with the ASA, ensuring that there's a harmonized implementation of the European aviation rules. At the same time, the Commission also has a lot of ambitions in terms of innovation, digitalization, AI, etc. So how does it look from your watchtower when you look at the aviation industry of the innovation mushrooming up here and there, and you look at the same time also guarding the single market, ensuring the safety?
Well, let me start by saying that we love innovation, and we actually spend a lot of money supporting it. I mean, we heard earlier today about the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking and the substantial investment of the Union in that. We have here CESAR, which is also partly funded by the European Union. And we also give money directly to EASA to conduct research on innovation in aviation, for instance, on data for safety, the use of artificial intelligence, and so forth. So clearly, if we want innovation, we also need to make sure that the regulatory framework is in place to then bring these innovations to the market. And I must say I was rather pleased by the earlier panel when I heard Sebastian Seemann saying that actually, from his perspective, most of the things he needs are already in place and do allow innovative products such as his new electrified plane to come to the market. And I think this is possible because we have, together with EASA and the member states and the EASA committee, since 2018, under the new EASA basic regulation, embarked on a road which is much more based on performance-based regulation as a means to ensure that people have clear rules as regards the objectives that they should obtain and more flexibility in relation to the means that they use to obtain them. And I think the area of drones and the recent EASA opinion on eVTOLs is a very good example on that, because there clearly the rules are both performance-oriented and operation-centric. They're proportionate to the type of operations and the environment in which you operate. So the rules are different if you transport people or if you transport goods. They're different if you fly over congested areas as compared to over the high seas. And so you can modulate the regulations in this way in order to ensure that they are much more precise and targeted in relation to these operational requirements. Now, one of the points of performance-based regulation is also the increased use of standards, and we heard here from EuroK how important that is. But I must say that this also requires that industry plays its role in the standardization bodies. And I have seen that in certain areas where the standards are actually not coming because industry is not active enough in the standardization committees to develop certain standards, for instance, in the area of drones. And clearly here, I mean, industry also needs to play its part if it wants innovation to thrive, and if it wants performance-based regulation to actually be filled with life. Finally, a word on the EASA evaluation. We heard it earlier today. We have just conducted this evaluation, which overall is extremely positive in relation to the work of the agency, as well as the regulation itself, which also means that we will not be contemplating an immediate revision of the EASA basic regulation in the next 1 or 2 years. But nevertheless, the area of innovation there was highlighted by several stakeholders as something which would require maybe more reflection. And here I can only invite you to be a bit more precise. I mean, as industry, as national authorities, as to where you think the system is not working properly and what we could do to change or to better address these issues within, on the one hand, the existing regulatory system, which has flexibility positions such as the Article 71 of the EASA basic regulation, and also in relation to possible changes to that system, so that when we actually do go about revising the regulation in 3, 4, 5 years' time, that we then have a good toolbox of ideas in our hands in order to be as proactive and practical as possible.
Thank you very much. There is a lot of talking in the aviation community, and you have also touched it with your own words. Test beds, regulatory sandboxes. I think, Arnold, you called it a safety bubble. Where it all leads to the same kind of thing. You say you have a new creature, a new process, a new thing you want to test. You don't know really what it is. Can you create some bubble around that where you can learn, where you can iterate, where you can put some first tests? Joachim, you mentioned also you can perhaps fly over the high seas where with minimal risks. How can we exploit that? In fact, we all know that the drones regulation applies this very operation-centric approach, meaning that the requirements depend on where you fly. It's another thing flying over high seas than over congested cities. I mean, the risk picture is completely different. So, can we go down that way? Since also rulemaking will take time, from 1 to 3 years. So, can we get about it with these innovation projects in some kind of safe environments? Jan-Peter?
Oh yeah, I think you're touching on a very, very significant point, because at least when you look at sorry, those innovations that are of a systemic nature, that is introducing something that is not very narrow, understanding the innovation and also introducing this regulatory learning is something we need to try to combine. And we also see that, let's say for this, again, going back to the context of, I represent a state that really wants to test this new technology because it could really make a difference. It's not just would be a regulatory sandbox or an integrated test arena or whatever you choose to call it for the aviation people. It's also for those who need to be connected that have not been connected before. For example, the energy sector. It's understanding the sustainable criteria, the requirements there. It's understanding other parts than maybe we are normally used to talking about, because those can also play a role in whether this innovation will sort of grasp, whether it will be accepted in society, whether will be we have enough of arguments to say that this is good technology for us, but we need to learn in an environment that allows for it. So I think we need to see a difference between what are the certification criteria and what kind of flexibility can we provide in this sort of protected environment. And then again, we should not look not just at the aviation players being involved, but actually looking see if we can divide the elephant a little bit, and then but provide this open, level playing field for people, organizations to try to understand the innovations and then also learn for this regulatory learning. It's complex, but I think we need to start massaging and working in that direction, because we have to handle this complexity.
Anybody else? What in the ATM domain can you make a test bed or bubble there? Is that useful for what you're doing, Alain?
Yes, I mean, I've been working for César now for over 10 years, and at the beginning, all of the people that are working on our project, and it's about 2,500 people in 17 countries, so a lot of people, academicians, technologists, etc. They said, I don't want regulators in my project. They're going to kill my ideas. Okay, so that fear is slowly but surely evaporating. And I think there were obviously, we are now starting to, I would say, see some results from working closer to bring private stakeholders closer to authorities. And I think also the approach of regulators, and we just take the example of EASA, but I could also take the example of national authorities, now approach when they, AI, for example, they don't come with their rule set, their checklists. They come with, okay, we are entering a new domain. How can we make sense of it and understand it, and eventually then arrive to a new branch of rulemaking that could be applicable? That is happening for AI right now. It happened in the case of César for remote towers. That happened for unmanned air traffic management with U-Space, and it will continue. And the promise, I think, of having a home for innovation where people feel safe to collaborate between regulators and tech guys is, I think, extremely motivating. The actors are changing so rapidly, not just the technologies, the skills are changing so rapidly. You need to be on the pulse of that. And certainly we try in César to be a home for, I would say, this safe space for this to happen. But it requires time and attitude, and also, in a way, a new service offering of regulators that are there to help innovation happen. It's not coming in as the regulator that says, safe and safe.
Yeah, and that was, sorry to interrupt, that was exactly how I heard your point, Jan-Peter, that how can we help, how can we support, and also being humble enough to say sometimes, well, we don't know, because this creature we have never seen before, so we have to call somebody else who may know more. So normally, if you look at organizations all over Europe, airlines, training organizations, maintenance, production, they will normally, by default, contact their national authority. Some may go to EASA because we know each other or for various reasons. But are we good enough of working together, the innovator or the idea owner, the national authorities, and pan-European institutions like EASA, perhaps also research? Are we good enough at that? Do we know each other sufficiently when we face innovative ideas?
Maybe from an airline or technical operation point of view, the first thing when you talk about innovation is probably not you think about a rulemaking task or a standard. So I hear the call for industry being more active in standards, but innovating is everything but standard in the first phase. It's not a rulemaking task. It's kids in the garage having a great idea. So do we have that understanding somehow, or platform? Is it maybe an EASA role to provide such an experimental, agile project platform, which provides that agility? We all know, like, agile project management, but then at the same time introduce certain control steps. And we've come to something like that in the context of safety management, slice the elephant down in control steps, but here's the playfield. before we go implement, but of course we have to do management of change analysis, and that's where we try to harvest the standard. The standard is for efficiency, you harvest then, but in between it's interaction, brainstorming, testing, failing as early and fast as possible. And at least from my end, I'm not aware that there is such an established, let's say, framework in either the national or the European authority as a toolbox to support, to embrace, to somehow push that working together. And is it industry partnership contracts? There's a funding question probably behind it. Who knows what between the national authorities? There might be some that have all the AI know-how and the other ones know digital signatures better or VTOL or whatever. So to organize and orchestrate a bit that exchange and that freedom and yet provide safety stops. That could be maybe an excellent tool to push innovation yet maintain safety.
Thank you. Before giving the word to you, Joachim, we heard earlier today by EASA Chief Engineer Alain Leroy that we have some instruments in our house, innovation partnership contracts, and so where it's a kind of feasibility studies where we can explore such things. So some of the tools are in the box already. Question is if we have all the right partners on board. That's another issue. Joachim.
Well, I want to make the point that if you want the regulators to be active in innovation, you also need to make sure that they actually are knowledgeable enough and that they are involved from an early moment. And this is why we as DG Move, we spend a lot of time and energy to ensure that in the Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, EASA is involved from the beginning in all the projects which are being conducted. And since Clean Aviation is again the central program platform of the European Union to develop the plane of the future, we would hope that this would then put EASA in a position to also then come forward with the appropriate regulations, which will allow that the hydrogen plane that Clean Aviation is developing is then being brought to the market within the time frame that we have foreseen in order to meet the decarbonization objectives of the European Union.
When we look at the flexibility of the current regulation, because although operational rules, they are implementing rules endorsed by Commission, adopted by the member states together, and it's not going to be changed overnight. Then, therefore, we have the famous Article 71 in the basic regulation, which allows for some flexibility. I think it's a confession to say that it has not been drafted or worded with innovation in mind. It's highly indirect. However, now having that in place and not waiting only for a new basic regulation, do we sufficiently exploit the flexibility which is actually given to us? Any points on that?
Well, yes, I think there are two reasons for that. The answer, I think, is no. We're not exploring it enough. The one thing is that a lot of these areas are new, so we do not know enough. And this is why I think either a regulatory sandbox or at least an early involvement, as you talked about. Now there's a slightly more appetite to involve regulators. The early involvement means that we can actually develop competency. And that, I think, when we develop competency, and this is not just a formal thing, it's connecting early and understanding the innovation problem areas or the possibilities or the challenges. And then we can also start to look at how can we explore the flexibility even more. So I think in parallel, when we push boundaries on the regulatory side, we need to build competency so that we do not go outside of, because we have this safety issue, we have this societal acceptance issues that we need to take care of and balance all the time. So we should participate in developing and understanding how hydrogen is acting, and we need to do this not just EASA, this is also something national authorities and other players need to develop in parallel. And then I think we also gain competency in pushing for the boundaries for this legislation we have, and even also allow for maybe testing that is previously we would not sort of accept, but because we mature this notion of supporting innovation, we're actually able to look at the legislation we have with slightly new glasses. I know this could be controversial, but definitely think there's some potential here.
Any others in the panel meeting these flexibility requirements, whether they are straitjacket or if they are they can actually accommodate? I don't know if you have met that, Alain, when some of your projects are coming close to launch, where you need to kind of exempt from certain rules because it takes simply too long to redraft the rules.
When you look at the technologies that have reached a level of maturity where we can now actually talk about bringing them to market, I think the conclusion was that by large, with the current regulatory framework, by adapting it, by being smart about it, we can kind of make it happen. It may take a little bit longer, but it's not the end of the day. When I then look at what's in the pipeline of what's next, where it's not anymore just rule-based ops, it's not about equipment, it's not about procedures, it's about what could a data-based ops look like. It's about services, it's about processes, it's about a dynamic human-machine interface. There people start to be like, okay, let's progress a little bit further, but I think this is the area where I don't have the answer. This is up to the audience to have it. But where I foresee that there will, when you look at the technology, at least on digital, I don't know about the aircraft systems, but on digital, there may be a time where adaptation is not enough anymore, and we need to think about creating new branches of law, also in aviation, to make sure that it continues to, that this technology is actually protective of aviation. And we argue that unless you embrace this, we are going to have more risks.
But is that the areas where you talk about, as I hear it, more disruptive innovations, where you're disrupting not only within a domain with incremental innovations, but you are actually addressing several domains with the new digital systems? Is that where you can apply such a safety bubble or test bed, which we discussed just before, because you're not fully aware of the impact?
I basically think that at the same time as we develop the technological prototypes, we should be prototyping the regulations. And that should be the safe bubble for it to be a home that feels we're safe for people to work together. So let's make it happen.
Yeah. Arnold?
Maybe an additional element to it, and I think it's all about mindset. We've got tools which can be used and frameworks, but is my role as national authority to support and promote innovation, including safe bubble, or is it to enforce regulation?
Yeah, that was also what Jan-Peter addressed before.
And I have full respect for both roles, but is it everybody wants those two roles, or how do we link the innovators together, being from a know-how point of view, or how can we speak the same language across national boundaries? Yeah, the first thing it might be you get a notice for airmen that forbids and takes away that interpretation you need for innovation, and it will be a different one in the next state and a different one in the next state. Working for a group airline, I tell you, this is a lot of fun. Think about digital signatures. Impossible across Europe, and not even stemming from safety regulations. So I think it's very much about that mindset. Is the mission of regulators innovation? Yes, then let's organize that community of innovators, and yet at the same time we need a stable element, no doubt, for the routine operation.
Thank you, Joachim, and then Mark.
Excuse me. No, on your earlier question, I think the use of Article 71 exemptions is a bit of a band-aid. Huh? I mean, the wording of the article, which talks about urgent and unforeseen operational needs, whether they are really met for introducing innovations is debatable. I think before you go there, you can still consider whether a change to the regulation is not possible. I mean, in clear cases, we have done that in less than a year. And then, of course, you also have, below the sort of hard law of the implementing acts, you still have the AMCGM and the certification specifications as something which is much more flexible and where EASA actually can bring about changes relatively quickly. So I really would invite you to first consider that before you go and simply exempt something on the basis of more or less invented urgency or the possibility to not foresee the use of that specific type of aircraft or type of operation.
Right. Thanks. Mark, did you have?
Yes, I just wanted to say that within EuroK working groups, we have quite a few groups which are in combination with SAE or RTCA. And within these groups, we do have EASA as a participant in the group, and we have the FAA also as participants. So they contribute to the groups for the development of the standards. So the collaboration, the partnership happens at the standardization phase. And I think that's a key element to ensure the regulation is correct and the standards are fit for purpose to support that regulation. And I have an example from 2013 where there was a EuroK standard for the remote tower. Now, this standard was originally a standard for visual representation. So the standard was released in 2013. But since then, the standard has been enhanced because more data became available, better sensors became available. And through the better data, we're able to create a better standard. And this standard now is internationally recognized for remote tower. So the innovation happens, and it can happen gradually, and it can be then through the process of partnership and collaboration, through EASA, EuroK, and industry, then we can actually get to the final result of innovating and stepwise innovation as well.
I think you have a very important point here, because whatever direction we are moving in Europe, we have international partners, and if we move too far without really discussing that with the partners, there is a risk that it cannot be implemented internationally. So your point is spot on. Involve key international partners early, so they're aware that something is cooking, it's moving, and then hopefully get a mutual understanding, a mutual recognition that this is okay. I think it's time to turn the views to the Slido. I hope it's still active with you, and I can see that we already have a range of questions, which we hopefully can handle. Oh, it's changing.
It's a bit hard to follow.
So the first question is about, and I guess everybody can see it, so I don't need to read it, whether IA could be used in order to make the regulator to speed up and place itself in a closer position from technological capabilities and give more efficient answer to the industry. Can AI be used? Anybody has a good point on that?
Within the standardization process, whether AI can be used or not, it's difficult. If it's ChatGPT AI, I'm not sure. But if we're looking at the other tools, statistics, machine learning, that there could be aspects which could be useful in the development of standards. Currently, we develop standards today with Word. It's a meeting of people. They write something in Word with tables, etc. So we could look at other ways of developing standards, be it through model-based systems engineering or other types of techniques. So there's other ways of developing the standards and then delivering the standards, because also the standards currently are PDF, so people write them. These standards could also be delivered in a digital format that could also automatically be used within the tools of the industry who develop the products.
But I think just a short comment on that, because I do believe that there's a sort of market for it, because what we experience when we look at innovation, at least from our perspective, is that there are quite a few innovators that are new to aviation. And I think to some of those, it really could make sense to make use of AI to gather information, to try to understand, so they do not come to us and knock on the door and say, tell us about the aviation system. In that respect, we see that there could be definitely use, because they're not finding the definite answers, and we hear there's a variation, you know, if you do the same search or ask the same questions. But you can still use it to build some basic knowledge and try to understand, and then you need to collaborate with the regulators or others just to verify that they have understood right. But I think in preparatory work, it can really help with these that are rather new to the aviation sector.
Okay. Whether AI can be used, I mean, with a click of the finger to write regulation, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow, but there is a very important point on the current way of drafting rules. Do you know what we use when we draft rules? It's a very well-known program called Word. Is Word well equipped for machine learning, for machine interpretation and further dissemination into other digital or artificial assistants? No.
Not yet.
So here there's also a challenge on how to draft the rules, not only as the lyrics in a Word file, but also to make it feasible for machine learning and machine use. So there is some work to be done here.
Can I have a comment on drafting the rules? Because we touched, as someone mentioned, performance-based, I think it's you, talk about performance-based regulation. And it's a little bit interesting because often we use subject matter experts to refine regulation. And subject matter experts tend to do more of what they already know. They tend to maybe go and say that, okay, we need to be even more, go in depth to make absolutely certain this is safe, or this is some other need. So I think we have again, a little bit back to maybe cultural challenge also, to be able to actually make the strategic regulatory development, make it strategic enough to facilitate innovation and disruptiveness or just evolution. But I think that is something that we need to be really conscious about it. So we make sure that we do not make the experts make even more of what they already know, because it may not be within their area of competency to understand the future needs. So they will maybe write from what they already did. So we have a lot of experienced people within aviation, but I think we need to inject both people with systemic understanding and strategic understanding, but also really forward-looking. And then, of course, we need to validate and make sure the quality is good enough.
Next question, top of the scoring. If you can imagine simplification and the harmonization of current regulations as a first innovation step. Well, just a comment from my side here that everybody can agree high level on simplification, harmonization, and moving in a performance-based direction. And if it was very easy, it was probably done already. So how do we tackle this? On the one hand, wanting to simplify because we already have a very complex system, and on the other hand, also ensuring that we are sufficiently precise, so we provide legal certainty in the rules, that it's not up to everybody to interpret whatever they want from the regulation. See, that's one of the issues. So what is your point on that?
Well, I think my answer is no and yes. I think simplification is a pipe dream. I mean, we are talking about complex technical issues here. We are regulating an industry which is, on the one hand, has a great safety record, and on the other hand, is inherently dangerous. I mean, we're talking about flying in a steel tube in 10,000 meters in the sky. So we need to have complex rules in order to make sure that things are safe. And on harmonization, well, tell me what is not harmonized. I mean, we do have a harmonized EU aviation safety system in place with rules which apply across the EU 27. And we also believe that there is internal harmony in the sense that we don't have blatant contradictions between the rules that we put forward in one area towards the rules that we have in another area. I mean, this is why we do have a committee consisting of the experts of the member states. This is why we have EASA preparing this legislation in order to ensure that it is actually harmonized.
Next question, apparently generated by ChatGPT. Let's see. How we balance the need for innovation with conservative safety-first ethos of regulatory bodies like EASA. Are we at risk of stifling technological progress in the name of caution, or are we perhaps not being cautious enough? See, that's the whole, I think that's the basic theme of this whole discussion, if you allow me to say that. Because we cannot throw the safety baby out with the bathwater. We will not be praised for that. So it is about balancing and accommodating both needs. Joachim, you have a point.
No, I just wanted to make the point that, I mean, we should not be under the impression that EASA now is particularly concerned with safety as regards AI, and outside of aviation you can do whatever you want. I mean, the European Commission just has adopted a proposal for an AI regulation, which for safety critical applications outside of aviation also foresees very strict rules in terms of how the AI should be tested, how it should be regulated, how it should be approved. I mean, we have ensured that aviation is actually not covered by that because we believe that EASA is the best body in order to also certify the A part of the aviation system. But really, I mean, if it is safety critical, I mean, it should be regulated, and it is being regulated not only in aviation but also outside of aviation.
I can see that the next couple of questions are very much addressing EASA, and since I'm not a panelist, I would rather generalize the questions a bit and also pose it to the national authorities. How do we, or can we apply in the oversight work, in the safety intelligence work we're doing, can we apply AI? Jan-Peter, I will ask you first.
Well, I don't know if this is purely an AI question. I would like to link it to a slightly bigger picture, if that's all right. I think the situation right now, because as I think we established that it's a clever move to bring national authorities in collaboration with the EASA into innovation processes early. I think that's one thing. And then when you with the situation for most authorities, as with most companies as well, we're hard-pressed. We don't have enough resources. So what do? Now, one thing we can do is to look at regulation also from an efficiency point of view and look at how can we use either more data, how can we use AI to work more efficiently as an authority. Because we need to adapt to that. Otherwise, we'll also be losing out because we're getting new tasks every year. Now all of a sudden we're a space agency. Well, the good thing about also being a space agency is that we get funding because there's regulation. But many of the innovation things we're talking about today, there is no regulation yet. So we do not get funding. So we need to solve this, many of us, within the frame we already have. So we need to think about how do we work smartly, and even, I would suggest, even look at doing research on the modern way of sort of living the regulation, the modern way of being an oversight body, etc. So I think this is not just AI, but this is connected to really working smarter as an authority as well.
Are there authorities there, Arnold? You are dealing with, in the big Lufthansa group, with a multitude of national authorities. Could you see some ways to move forward by applying new technologies?
Definitely, and well, still testing the grounds, but very much to what Jan-Peter said, I think we need to look at what the value add is, and authorities are no different from other organizations in that sphere. We are all finding out that maybe complex research, analytical, repetitive tasks, they might move towards that automated, assisted, call it AI, whatever, but tool-supported bucket. Maybe showing compliance to the letter of the word, maybe in the future. Check the CAME. Can we maybe have that assisted, support the inspector? How about reliability data analysis? I mean, there's these concepts, data for safety, but can it be leaned out, made faster, benefiting the safety and at the same time the efficiency. So to have the human brains on the concepts, on the more strategic development, all the elements we heard here today. And that move, I think, is the actual change for us as human beings. Let's connect, discuss, let's have that joint discussion, industry and authorities together, and that will all boom us into this new next level, whatever we call it. Is it EASA 5.0 then?
Okay.
2.0.
Can I just interject a very short comment, because this is historic. What we learned is that sometimes it's worth just do something, just try something. We had this remote tower project in Norway, where now I think it's a fabulous center, and we had a visit by someone from EASA last week. Is great. But the point being, it started off, for our part, I think 7, 8, 9 years ago. And initially, they came and knocked on the door and said that we're going to do this remote tower project. And I'm sure we did not have the competency. We felt we were on deep water and said, reluctant to engage. And then something happened, the pressure was there. And then we started we turned it, or they turned it. I was not there then, but they turned it, said that. And it changed from, no, we cannot, or, oh, this is difficult, this is dangerous, or this is, the concept is so new that we don't know enough about the safety. And they turned it around and said, how can we support? And that is, I think, for me, an example of how you can start doing things. Instead of discussing very principal matters up front and spending a lot of time and maybe not agreeing, and then just start to practice a bit. So that has turned out to be a sensational example, for us at least, to see how we can integrate or interact with innovators without sacrificing the integrity, and we're still being able to measure things or to approve things and give certification. So sometimes we should start practicing it and just do things.
Just do it.
I will take one, perhaps two questions more, and then round up. There's one question here on the need for EASA EU to put pressure on member states by defining more detailed regulation, avoiding national interpretation and delay. The question is addressing what happens if we move in a more performance-based direction. There will also be, by nature, because that's one of the purposes, some national or local variations. That will increase. And if we go to more prescriptive, the opposite will happen. There will be less room, but also less room for innovations. So it comes as a package, I suppose, that we are aware that there will be slightly different interpretations. In Norway, some of the authorities that you're meeting, Alain, will have another interpretation than the neighboring authority. Is that a big problem?
I think I mentioned it before. It's one of the biggest hindrances in development as a group, Lufthansa Group, having a proud collaboration and cooperation with 5 nations now, and having the same European regulation then augmented by, what is it?
But is the
for airmen, etc.
Is the solution then to have more detailed rules?
Free up and return to the strategic concepts and have an interaction and talk about the purpose on how to support whatever the concept or the innovation is. I think that's the only way.
Okay. Any more comments on that?
Less is more.
Okay.
Not on this one.
Okay. Should we take a last one? It is with the dawn of new technologies, it's time for better integration to ensure continuous improvement of regulatory framework and to ensure that development and innovation is never stifled like a current technology development is. Well, have we touched it, or any more comments on that?
I have one more.
Please.
I think that we're a small country. We're not part of the EU. but we are part of EASA. So we're part of the, we have to act as an EU state. But we're also having the dialogues with the UK and FAA just to try to understand what they're doing, because we have to be street smart. And I think every authority, as commercial organizations, we have to be a little bit street smart and try to pick up where are other people working on the same issues. And this is rather complex in itself, figuring out where is who doing what exactly. And so I had a little discussion this morning with someone from EASA, and where we talked about, should we try to find a way of connecting people more in these thematic areas, to try to get some structure on that, because it's not all about the big innovations, but sometimes it is. It's a systemic change. And to try to join up, because sometimes we tend to create large EASA groups, and they can be sometimes a bit difficult to get to nudge, to get moving. And then maybe we need to address it slightly differently. And together with industry, together with maybe even political levels or other interest with NGOs, I think we need to think a bit outside the box to try to create these smaller groups and not just always look at the very large structures and finding together across, across the board and really in these thematic areas. So I think that's one of the key things in how we can deal with this complexity, and because we know that we cannot have the competence in all of these areas. We have to collaborate, but it's a matter of how do we do it smartly, and how can you work with all of it to do it smartly. I think that's a key question for us as an authority, at least.
Thank you very much. If you allow me to try to sum up some of the main points, and I hope I captured the most important ones, because there's really been quite a number of good points in the panel and also by the questions. So I will try. The first point I will mention is early involvement of the partners here, also between national authorities, EASA, and the applicants or the innovators, if we should call it that way. And sometimes it may be in a crossroads between certification of the vehicle, of the machine, and the operations of it. So there we also need to integrate. So gathering the key partners early, and you added also, Mark, a very important thing, also the international partners should not be left aside for too long, because otherwise we will face problems with mutual recognition later on. Second point I've noted is competences key. We need to gather people who knows what they're talking about. And this can be difficult. Well, it goes without saying, you can say, but it can be difficult because when you're touching some of the new things, some of the innovations, the competences are not strong everywhere. Perhaps an agency like EASA may know a bit more because we have both certification or operations. But even we can also be forced to go to the research, to the academic world to get assistance on some of the new things, basically because we have not met them before. So gathering the right stakeholders early and ensuring that the competences are in the room, so to speak. Then we had, as a third point, some discussions about the current flexibilities. I didn't hear any absolute showstoppers, although the text, as Joachim pointed out, with urgent operational needs is a bit confining. Still, we have seen examples of, should I call it, creative solutions of applications of flexibility provisions. So the message could be to both innovators and to authorities, don't give up at first. Let's see how far we can get together on using the flexibilities rather than just waiting 1, 2, 3 years for new regulation. Then I think an element we could factor in here, which we touched several times in the discussion, is could we use this operation-centric approach where we mitigate risks by creating safety bubbles, test beds, or whatever we call it, to get going. So we can learn from that and iterate and climb up the safety ladder in the sense when we are ready to take the full risk, so to speak, to fly over congested cities and so on, then we have learned on the way, and we have a lot of data which we can document that we have actually taken care of safety. We have also touched that research is important, not only what CSI is doing, but more in general, that it can contribute both with direct competences and also with testing in real-life conditions some of the ideas which are floating. So that is definitely an aspect. There is quite often research funding available for such matters, so let's apply that instrument also. The downside is, of course, that results from research will not come tomorrow, but it may be one of the work streams we should be considering along with the practical tests and applications. Then I heard, despite that some of the questions perhaps were questioning also a bit, that there is a general agreement that we should move in the direction of more performance-based regulations, allowing for more flexibility in the interpretation. EASA, by our work of standardization, will try to ensure that the application is as harmonized as the hard law tells us. But there will be variations. But that is also the purpose of having this more flexible interpretation. And finally, a part of the more performance-based regulation is also the use of industry standards. There will be increasing number of items coming to us, innovation projects, where it's doubtful whether it should be captured everything by new rule making. Some of the things may also be more effectively handled by industry standards, helping everybody, basically, helping industry, because you can have a serious impact on the standard itself, helping also the regulators, because we don't have to draft everything. So here, I think there are some synergies which can be exploited. Finally, I would say that this discussion has hopefully shed some light on the difficulties, the challenges we have when we're facing new innovative ideas. But I think also, both in the questions and in the panel, we have seen there is a clear, strong willingness to handle this, because it's a part of the obligation of the regulatory system. Industry is seeing a clear need, is knocking on our doors. We should confront this with open minds, of course, still taking care of safety, because we're born to do that as regulators, but doing it in a way which doesn't block innovation, rather the opposite. We would like to facilitate it so we can both make innovation more green, more safe, and at the same time also more efficient as a system as a whole. So that will eventually also contribute that we in the future can travel from Sevilla to Sumatra in whatever vehicle will be available for that purpose. So thereby contributing to our overall journey altogether. I will thank the panel very much for contributing. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for sharing. Thanks also to the audience for posing interesting and tricky questions. Thank you a lot. We have 2 minutes left, but I think that's well spent to go down the ramp here and sit again. So thank you very much.